We've got our new carbon fiber airbox in there, so it's finally time to retune the BADASS2000. Here's my precious, all bolted into the engine bay. She's a tight fit, and Pete, like the pack rat that he is, had some old air intake parts kicking around the shop.
But you gotta admit, it fits pretty much perfectly.
It does, it really does. It's this kind of accordion style intake tubing, but it's actually really strong.
Yeah, it's aluminum, so it doesn't really buckle.
Yeah, and it's in a nice black finish, so it looks good. He had this sort of nice reducer coupler here that fits perfectly.
And we will say it is still a 3-inch diameter on it.
Yeah, this inlet was a little larger than 3 inches because of the buildup of carbon and then the lip that Kevin built in so that this won't slip off. So this is still a 3-inch hose. And then we've connected that to the end piece of our AEM cold air intake. So it bolts to the chassis, it goes down to under the front headlight there with a filter on it. So we have a proper filtered setup. So we're not going to blow up our F20C here. The only other thing that's changed, of course, is the exhaust system. So let's jump back to the shop and we'll show you all the details on that. Well, PT, I guess the S2000 is officially a trailer queen because we are going to a catless exhaust system. No more emissions concerns for us. And we also thought, you know what, we want to make as much power as we can with these ITBs, and we felt like the smaller diameter exhaust we had on the car was maybe holding it back a bit.
Well, that and the internet kept chirping us about it, so
they did. The internet
we're gonna
experts
find out.
say go 3-inch, it makes power. So we're either going to prove the internet experts right or wrong by going to a full 3-inch exhaust. And I gotta say, this Berk 3-inch system is beautiful, isn't it? I mean, they clean it up so nicely. Their welds are really high quality. They polish it up beautifully. I would say it's the nicest looking American-made exhaust system I've ever come across. It's like JDM spec out of the USA.
Yeah, it's fantastic. They even include Honda rubber hangers.
Yeah. I also love the fact that they use a V-band to join the two sections. No fussing with all those little nuts and bolts that get rusty and then you shear them off when you're taking the exhaust. This will be super easy to get in and off. Even this hanger they designed, they built themselves, is like nice. So anyway, it's obviously full stainless system, 3-inch diameter. It's got this nice little check engine light eliminator for your O2 sensor if you're worried about having that light on your dash. I guess we'll just turn it off with our AEM. And the muffler is a true perforated core race muffler, so it's true full pass-through. There's no baffling in it. It's a perforated core, 4-inch tip. That's really all you need to know about it. It should only take Pete about 5 minutes to bolt this thing up. I should mention that this is Berk Technology's single exit setup, so it's just the one muffler, which is nice for, you know, a track car like this since it saves a bunch of weight. Apparently it's about half the weight of the factory exhaust system, so nothing wrong with losing some weight, especially when you're shaped like me. Peter's getting hung here.
Oh yeah, look at that. All right, man, fitment is looking good so far. Actually looking fantastic.
Oh yeah, looking proper. All right, guys, that is about all she wrote for this install.
It really did take,
Actually, probably about 10 minutes. I just got to do this V-band up. Got to get this lined up here and then tightened, and we are good to go. All right, fired up. Now that my ears are ringing a bit, it's time to get back to the dyno. But before we do that, I'm really digging this Berk Technology license plate holder frame. So I'm gonna bolt it up. And I think it's safe to say we are dyno tested and track proven at the end of this episode.
Before we test that carbon airbox, we should mention that the problem we were having at Grid Life turned out to be a cam syncing problem with our AEM Infinity. They've since sent us a little patch for it. Sasha did a couple of keystrokes in there to install it, so we should be all good on that. So with that said, we're going to take off the carbon airbox first to do some testing with an open air setup. Here's our before and after results. These are both done with the hood open. So that's our original Gen V tune done with the high flow cat and the Tanabe 2.5-inch exhaust. And the other, of course, is hood open now with our full 3-inch header back exhaust with no cat from Berk Technology. And the gains are just absolutely massive. The mid-range gains in particular, there's a few spots here where we've picked up 30 wheel horsepower in the mid-range, and really all the way from 4,000 up to, what is it, almost 7,500 RPM. The gains are huge. So the internet was right. They were chirping us, Pete. They said we had to go to a 3-inch exhaust. And it turns out every once in a while the internet actually knows what it's talking about. Before we test our carbon airbox, we want to see how much power we're losing with the hood closed and the ITB sucking in just hot engine bay air. So we're going to close the hood and make a pull. Apparently sucking in hot engine bay air really does make a difference, because we lost between 10 and 20 horsepower across the power band and about the same amount of torque, again, across the whole power band with the hood closed, sucking in hot engine bay air versus with the hood open and all just nice cool air being pumped in there. So our real horsepower on the track with the hood closed was probably about 205 wheel with the air filter in there sucking in hot engine bay air.
Well, and even worse, because we'd be getting even hotter air. Today's like a cold day.
It's true.
In the dyno here in the middle of the summer. I'm thinking we were probably under 200 wheel easy.
Yeah, it felt like it was down on power for sure when we were at grid life. So now we're going to put that airbox on there. We'll route cold air through the filter that we've set up here, and we'll see where we're at. Sasha wants to do some science, so we are going to try this larger diameter 3.5-inch tubing with a velocity stack on the end, rather than the 3-inch hose that we set up at our place. Based on what Sasha was seeing on the dyno, he thinks maybe we're not getting quite enough of an air charge into the airbox, so this will be a way to test that theory. And if this does make more power, I guess we'll have to think about switching to a setup like this and routing it to a headlight, or down into where the air intake is routed already. So let's test this out, see if it makes any jam, and if it does, then we got more wrenching to do, I guess. Be a good problem to have though, right, Pete?
Yeah.
Here you can see our 3.5-inch versus our 3-inch intake setup, and we made 214 peak power with the 3.5-inch take and only 209 peak horsepower with the 3-inch intake. So bigger is definitely better in this instance.
Yeah, you can see it's pretty much cleaned up all around on the entire chart, right? So we're picking up power everywhere.
Yeah, and who knows, if we went to a 4-inch intake, maybe it would make even more power. It might get closer to that 218 mark that we saw with the open air setup. We should also mention that we made huge mid-range gains from that 3-inch header back exhaust system, so big thumbs up to Berk Technology on that. That is definitely a mod worth doing if you're building a race car. No cat is not street car friendly, but since this thing is a race car now, we're not terribly worried about it. To wrap this episode up, we're going to give you a quick show and tell here on our stock intake manifold dyno pull versus our Gen V ITB pulls from today.
So basically the stock car to where we are now.
Yeah, and this really shows you the massive mid-range gains that we've made with the Gen Vs. And I'm attributing that to the Gen Vs more than anything else, partly because Sasha says so, but also because we know from looking at other people's cars that this is the power potential that ITBs offer you, and you just need the right supporting mods. We've really proven that the 3-inch exhaust is one of the supporting mods you need for the Gen Vs to really breathe. So in the sort of 5,500 to 6,500 RPM range, we've literally picked up 40 wheel horsepower. That's an absolute massive amount. As Sasha was saying, it's going to feel like a torque monster pulling out of the corners now. So I think that really shows you the potential of the Gen Vs if you have the rest of the setup well sorted out. So we're excited to get this thing out to the track finally in the spring. Pete, on the other hand, is not having a great day under here. He's doesn't have the right tools for the job, do you, buddy?
Nope. And I'm on the ground again.
He's on the cold cement. The story of his life.
This muffler works really good as a pillow.
That's true. Look at that headrest.
Feel that. Oh yeah.